What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of Loaded Box Vids. Today, we are going to be doing another rookie head-to-head. We're going to be covering Jaylen Waddle versus Devonta Smith. We're going to be covering Michael Carter versus Kenny Gainwell. And then we're going to take a look at those quarterbacks not named Trevor Lawrence. And we're going to kind of do a Trey Lance versus Justin Fields versus Zach Wilson kind of trifecta there. But before we get started, Dylan, how you doing, man?
It's just, even I know what's coming at this point. And, I'm just happy to be here. It's a pleasure to talk football. No, but in all seriousness, it is exciting. I think this day arguably might be more entertaining. I think you and I might disagree more. We don't pre-plan the videos too much, so that way people listening and watching actually get somewhat live reactions between the two of us, even though we do have very similar football brains, so it should be fun.
Yeah, for what it's worth, anyone who's watching right now, Dylan and I literally figured out the players that we were going to do about 10 minutes ago. Haven't discussed anything whatsoever. We're just going into this blind, going off the top of our head, what we know about these guys.
We're still only a couple of years out of college. We still have the mindset, and I'll just wing it. It's working so far.
Procrastination at its finest, doing it at the very last second. But with that being said, we will jump right on into it. And we'll start off with those two receivers of Jaylen Waddle and Devonta Smith. Now, obviously, Ja'Marr Chase is the unquestioned 101 for most people of this class, which is why I did not put him in here. There are some people saying that he's worthy of even the number one overall pick in rookie selections, which I disagree with, as I've said before. But regardless, Jaylen Waddle versus Devonta Smith, we have college teammates. Both of them were excellent this past year, and both of them have had pretty decent college careers. Obviously, Alabama's always had a loaded receiving room, so you don't see a ton from these guys if you look at their freshman year and sophomore year stats. But the last couple of years, both of them have showed out. I want to get your take first, though, because I know you're a pretty big Devonta Smith fan. So how about we talk about him before we get into Jaylen Waddle?
And with him, it's no secret. Mikey just kind of hinted at it. I would choose him and whoever other have between this battle or between this comparison of players. But it's not as far as you would think, and it's really not even play style or ability. It's more just statistically, smaller receivers like Devonta Smith do not always hit in the NFL. Similar to how I was ranting last week about guys who are just fast and run really fast from one direction to the other.
Yeah.
So there is risk, and especially because both of these guys are going to be first round picks in real life and in Dynasty. Devonta Smith might go. I mean, both of them might go as high as top 10 or top 15 in real life. So they're going to go to a team that needs a receiver. So that's nothing to worry about. I do think Smith, though, if he breaks that curse, almost like the Madden curse, would be the better player in the NFL. It's just the size, the physical size is slightly. Football is a little different. Sometimes size does play into it. I think even more so for receivers than running backs.
Yeah, and I think his BMI. I mean, I hate it when people use BMI as an argument, but in Devonta Smith's case, I mean, his BMI, I'm pretty sure is like under 24 or something like that, which is really.
To be fair, didn't Tyreek Hill? I mean, Tyreek Hill now is not an overly large guy weight wise, and he came into the NFL relatively light. I'm not saying he was as light, but he's one of the guys who has absconded that. Like,
oh, for sure. And when people ask me, what I like about Devonta Smith, I say that he reminds me a lot of Tyreek Hill, actually. And people are always like, "Why? That's stupid." Like Devonta Smith's not this speedster that Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill's not the speedster that a lot of people think that he is. Obviously, he's extremely fast, but some people, that's the only thing they give him credit for. He's an undersized receiver that runs really smooth routes, always knows how to get open. He's just an absolute baller, and that's what Devonta Smith is, in my opinion. Between these two guys, I would also lean Devonta Smith in a nutshell. In my opinion, his ceiling is much higher than Jaylen Waddle's.
Exactly. I think Waddle's just safe.
Yeah, I would definitely say Waddle is the safer of these two, but they both come with a fair amount of volatility. Obviously, Devonta Smith has the size volatility, but he does have that it factor. Like, arguably, his ceiling is just as high, if not higher, than Ja'Marr Chase's. But Devonta Smith has this extreme level of risk because of that size. And obviously, Not that the injury was really his fault, but he had that injury that held him out of the last half of the championship game. You got to wonder how that's going to linger coming in. I'm pretty sure he should be good by the time football activity ramps up again, but obviously something to monitor. Jaylen Waddle is also coming off of injury. He ended up playing in the championship game, and he should not have. You could totally tell that he was really
a little hobbled, just a little
really hobbled. But Jaylen Waddle, on the other hand, a lot of people are also comparing him to Tyreek Hill, but in the different way, because Jaylen Waddle is this super fast speedster guy, but he's not a one-dimensional player. He runs an excellent route. His route tree is pretty extensive. You can kind of line him up wherever you want to on the field. Like, he's not going to be the guy that Henry Ruggs was last year, or John Ross was however many years ago, where we're just hyping him up because of they're just super fast. Like, Jaylen Waddle is genuinely a really good receiver. And you can kind of see that. Like, Alabama just breeds really good receivers. Really good
running backs and receivers recently. There's quite a good list of guys who have gone in. But I agree. I mean, I think this is probably the closest one, and it's funny that they're on the same team too. So it's literally just your preference. I mean, they play for the same quarterback, same coach, same team. They're both fast. Like, neither of them are slow. I don't have their 40 times up. I messed up. My tab closed out, but I'm assuming they're not bad if they ran the 40 time. So I don't know. I mean, I would say Smith, just because also he's falling in dynasty drafts a little bit because of the weight, the BMI concern, and I've seen him fall in mocks to like the 6 to 9 range. Nice, pun intended. But no, if he falls there, I mean, that's just a smash draft if you're an owner who might need a receiver or best player available. So for me, it's just Smith.
Yeah, I think, outside of maybe the top 3 picks in my entire rookie draft, right? Because if you have a top 3, top 4 pick, you want your guy who's going to be safe. You want that surefire thing. So you would want to lean with a Jamar Chase or a Kyle Pitts or Najee Harris.
If you're not top 3, it's game on.
Exactly. But, once you get to that 5, 6, 7, 8 area, you're kind of just swinging for the fences. And Devonta Smith, I mean, he could be a top 5 fantasy receiver.
I'm not comparing 2 or 3 years. Yeah, I agree. I'm not comparing this player in play style, but I'm comparing him to how I think the ADP will pan out. DK Metcalf is a guy in a lot of dynasty leagues and drafts I saw fall a little bit because of the concerns about him only.
His cone drill.
Yes, but am I not wrong though? He did fall. People
he did. He fell way too far, and then
I was able to grab him in a dynasty startup in 9th, and one of my other good friends, besides this man right here in the camera, grabbed him 10th, and I saw people on Twitter grabbed him between the 5 and 10 spot as well. Yeah. So this literally could be that situation all over again if Devonta Smith still is like slightly hobbled or people keep hyping up the BMI, he could fall. And at that point, you just have to grab him. And I would do that 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, and I think so too. Smith is the guy where if he's still on my rookie draft board at pick 106, 107, I'm doing whatever I can to trade up and make sure that I'm getting him on my team because I do think he's going to be that good. Granted, if you're sitting at pick 7 or 8 and Jaylen Waddle is also there, I would be perfectly fine with waiting for him too. These are both really high upside players. Yeah. I'm not going to be upset about getting either of these guys on my team. Smith is my wide receiver 2. Jaylen Waddle is my wide receiver 3. Like I said, Smith's got the higher ceiling, but a little bit more volatility. This is a really hard battle to kind of look at because this is one of them where I don't think you're going to go wrong either way. The only thing that we have to note is we have to pay attention as to which one of them goes first in the NFL draft.
Yes.
It should be Smith, but the size is a big concern, as we keep saying. So Waddle could sneak in and be the 2nd overall receiver taken on draft day. Both of them should definitely be gone, I would say, by pick 15 at the very latest. So pay attention to those landing spots. Don't put too much into it because, we bring this up all the time. A.J. Brown landing in Tennessee, shit changes all the time.
Yeah,
draft for talent, not for situation with
receivers is definitely talent. There. Running backs is more the position, which is coming up next, which is a good segue, which that's the one you want to pay attention to landing spot.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next one. We both agree. We're taking Smith over Waddle, not by a significant amount, but we are. So the next one we're going to talk about is Michael Carter and Kenny Gainwell. And
this is where we might disagree.
There's an insane amount of hype on both of these guys for different reasons. When I first started reviewing film, Kenny Gainwell at one point was my RB3 in the class because he is that awesome. Then he had his pro day and was awesome during his pro day. when Kenny Gainwell was playing as a sophomore, he kept Antonio Gibson, who is really good in the NFL. He kept Antonio Gibson completely on the bench. Antonio Gibson had like 30 touches or something. I don't even think
40 times because I genuinely do not know. So this is the live
reaction.
Well,
I know Michael Carter's was pretty high. Michael Carter had like a 4.6 or 4.58, something like that.
Michael Carter ran a 4.5 and a 3.9 20-yard shuttle. Kenneth Gainwell ran a 4.42. So they're not that much speed difference. They're relatively the same.
Yeah, but I would say for the size that Carter is, I would like him to be a bit faster. But the cool thing is with Michael Carter, and we'll jump in and we'll talk about Michael Carter here first. He has an insane amount of burst. Like he is so explosive. Like
he's incredible. I think of that. You know the old YouTube video, the slippery little snake. That's Michael Carter.
It kind of is. I don't think that's an exaggeration. No, I mean Michael Carter he's insanely good. He's explosive as all hell. Obviously he's not the biggest running back out there. I don't necessarily think that he's built to have a workhorse role in the NFL. I don't think that is in his wheelhouse, to be completely honest with you. One thing that I do think with Michael Carter, though, is that if he goes to the right situation, for example, he's probably going to go either late day 2 or early day 3. So, teams like Atlanta or I don't know who else has running back issues right now.
There's quite a few. I mean,
there's a ton, but the first one that comes to mind would be Atlanta. This is a situation where Michael Carter could step in. He'd probably get the third down role right off the bat because he's phenomenal out of the backfield. He'd probably get the third down role right off the bat. And since there's no clear cut top dog on that team and there's not massive competition, he would get a run at first and second downs here and there. And I think he would show a lot of upside as a rookie. I don't know. I do really like Michael Carter. I just don't think he's built for a workhorse role.
See, I agree with that. But I also disagree because I choose Mr. Carter over. I'm trying to pick up his time. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I choose him over Gainwell. I just think he's more elusive. I mean, Gainwell's not elusive either. I'm not knocking him. I just think Carter, literally, besides his height, has all the intangibles you would want out of a modern day running back. Like he's great at pass catching. He can run. Obviously, he's not super slow. He's got good acceleration. He's shifty. He's elusive, slippery, like I alluded to earlier. That's all the things you want from a running back now. And like I was saying earlier, like with height and size with the receiver, that's more important than running backs. We're kind of seeing like some of the smaller running backs kill it in the NFL. And literally one of the best running backs of all time. Well, also took punt returns, but it was Darren Sproles, and he was tiny as crap. He made a very long career and probably won people fantasy seasons back in the day, long before my time. So no, I do agree. It's an interesting take. Not really interesting. It's kind of true. There's some fact behind it with how you're saying it's definitely landing spot dependent, and he's not going to be a bruiser back because of his size and not the lead back. But I think if he's just given a good volume and they have another back that can just take away several snaps, I think he'll be fine. I genuinely think the NFL is leaning towards players like him. Maybe not his size, but his style of play is what running backs are going to all be like soon.
Well, it kind of seems like a lot of teams want to adopt, having a Nyheim Hines, having a Tariq Cohen. If Miami ends up taking Najee Harris or Travis Etienne, they'd probably use Myles Gaskin similarly to a Nyheim Hines or Tariq Cohen kind of guy. I can see that in the range of possibilities for Michael Carter. But he's got an insane amount of versatility. He's a great runner or a great route runner out of the backfield. He's been lined up in the slot before, and I could definitely see that within the realm of possibilities at the next
level. He's had to share, it was quite another good running back on his
team. And I was actually going to bring that up because technically over the last 2 years, Michael Carter has outproduced Javonte Williams.
Bingo. I had that written down.
like both of them have been really, really awesome. They had an excellent timeshare. Obviously, tackling in the NFL is significantly better than tackling in college
that's
football.
Why I'm not worried about where he goes. I think he's good enough, unless he goes to a team where it's like elite running back, where he can prove himself to play with the other running back. Like literally, I'm not saying Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, but I'm saying he could be that useful. Like, you know what I mean? He could be the Kareem Hunt to someone's Nick Chubb.
He could, and I'm not going to dispute that. My biggest issue with him, despite his size, is his pass blocking is
that's not very
pretty bad. And with the type of player that he is, he needs to be a good pass blocker, because more often or more likely than not, to start his career, he probably is going to retain mostly a third down role until he kind of proves himself a bit more. And I don't think anyone can really dispute that, but he's not going to have a role in third down if the quarterback's getting blown up every time he's out there on the field. I mean, if he goes to a creative offense and they line him up in 2 running back sets or put him out in the slot, that's cool too. I think they're going to figure out a way to work him in because he does have that insane amount of burst and agility. But it definitely is cause for concern.
I didn't even think about that, and I knew he's bad at that, and you're right, that's a reasonable concern. And that's why, also just the fact how you brought up the point that he's going to have to work a little harder to get that lead role depending upon landing spot, which is true, whereas Gainwell is being viewed as a guy who can come in and be a starter day one, essentially, or close to day one. And I agree, depending upon the landing spot. You brought up Atlanta. I mean, imagine if Kenneth Gainwell gets stacked by the Falcons. That's a good spot.
Yeah. And before we talk about Kenny Gainwell, just give me 1 second. My cat is trying to get in.
That's okay, dude. That's, it's people understand. You have 2 cats. Mikey's a cat dad.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah, he knows how to open doors. So I forgot to lock the door, and he just whatever.
It's just in Mikey lives with terrifying cats. All right, let's go on to Mr. Gainwell.
Anyway, yeah,
your choice, I would assume.
Kenny Gainwell is definitely going to be my choice. So he does have better size than Michael Carter. Not a massive difference, but rather than being 5'8", he is 5'11", and he did put on weight. So one of the big issues with Kenny Gainwell is he weighed in only at like 193 or 194 this time of year and a half ago, when he was obviously playing, because he didn't play in the 2020 season. A lot of people were concerned because, like, dude, he's under 200 pounds. Like, what are we really actually going to expect from him in the NFL? For his pro day, he did put on weight, and he weighed in at 201 a few weeks ago, which is awesome. It shows that, during his time off, he was bulking. He was doing what he needed to do. He ran a 4.42 40, which is still pretty damn good, especially for a guy that was working on putting on weight more than anything. So that's one of the things I do really like that about Kenny Gainwell. Shows, obviously most players that are entering the NFL draft obviously have a shit ton of heart and a shit ton of drive and will to get better. But, being able to put on body mass like that is something that you got to appreciate out of the backfield while still maintaining his speed. As a runner, he's tremendous. He's patient at the line. He's elusive in the open field. And just like Michael Carter, he is a legitimate dual threat back. Kenny Gainwell is tremendous out of the backfield. In my opinion, you might argue this with me. In my opinion, Kenny Gainwell is the second best pass catcher out of the backfield, only behind Travis Etienne in this class. That's how much I like him.
I'm gonna argue with you, man. That's like a safe-ish. It's not like a hot take, It's not blazing.
Yeah, and I do like that. And I briefly brought this up when we were talking about Michael Carter, because I always got to sprinkle some Kenny Gainwell in there. The fact that he kept Antonio Gibson on the bench for basically the entire year. Kenny Gainwell had like 96% of the running back touches or something like that between those two guys. Like, we see what Antonio Gibson's doing with Washington. He's obviously really, really good. So Kenny Gainwell tells us one of two things. It's either that he's insanely good because he's better than Antonio Gibson, or that Memphis coaches do not know how to spot the right talent and they weren't using Antonio Gibson correctly. So
it happens sometimes in college football. There's some guys who destroy NFL, and they were like,
it does. And it's yet to be seen, but Kenny Gainwell is one of those guys that I do really, really like.
I will agree with you to one extent. I would draft him before Carter unless Carter goes to the ideal situation, because I feel like Gainwell is going to end up in a better situation in real life than Carter. And we talked about how running backs, you kind of want to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
They're both going to be like mid to late first round picks. I think with both of them, it depends for your dynasty league. It depends upon where they go, which will affect how early they go in the draft.
Yeah, and you'll also have to see. I mean, I personally think Kenneth Gainwell has a chance to be a round 2 selection, where Michael Carter, I think round 3 is probably his ceiling.
Yes,
but that's something to examine as well. You know, if a team is going to go out and take a running back in round 2 or even round 3, they're going to have an early role in their career. You can argue that round 2 running backs are going to be given the benefit of the doubt, and they're probably going to enter in. You know, they obviously won't be the RB1 on the depth chart day one, but in the coaches' minds, they're probably the RB1 on the depth chart.
It's kind of like the new meta for the NFL. Think about how many backs. Like it would. I can't even list them. I can't even talk thinking about the fact that how many are taken in the second, third, and even the fourth round in like the last 5-6 years.
Yeah,
there's a crap ton. And a lot of those guys are starters, or they're like the Naheem Himes, and they're basically pseudo starters. So you can definitely find talent if you're an NFL team in those rounds. One last thing to say about the situation, and this is not just Gainwell. I am a little concerned and see how like the COVID era affects college prospects going in the NFL. Not because of everything has happened, but just like any of the guys in any position who had to take a year off and they're going to get drafted with a top 3 grade, like first, second, third round. They're going to be insinuated or assumed to be a starter or a pseudo starter off the bat.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see how the trials and tribulations of the NFL affect them with not playing football in over a year.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested to see that as well. You know, we kind of touched base on that a little bit last week when we were talking about Rondell Moore and his small sample size between his injuries and COVID seasons and everything.
Guys like Jamar Chase, everyone's, you know, you have an article about it on the site and people are mad at you. And it's Jamar Chase is still incredibly talented. I'm not knocking him, but it may take him 4 or 5 games to be like the guy we think he is. He hasn't played football in so long.
Yeah, because he took off this year. So, you know, God only knows what that means. But yeah, so we clearly differ here. It's funny because with the exception of the size, these two guys are incredibly similar. I think they have similar ceilings. I think they have similar floors.
Preference for us.
Yeah, both of them could be stuck in a third down role. Both of them could be. I don't think either one of these guys is going to be a workhorse, but both of them could be borderline every down backs. I don't want to use the word workhorse, but they could be borderline every down backs. So it really just depends on where they end up. You know, we did talk about with the receivers, you want to pay more attention to the talent than the landing spot. Obviously, with running backs, you do want to draft with their talent in mind.
Yeah. Don't draft nobody's.
But running backs are relevant for significantly less time than wide receivers are from a fantasy perspective. So you want the running back that's going to go to the better situation. And out of these two, you know, let's say Kenny Gainwell ends up, I mean, this is not going to happen, but it's the only thing I can think of. Let's say Kenny Gainwell ends up on a depth chart behind Christian McCaffrey, while Michael Carter goes and ends up on the depth chart behind Mike Davis and Ito Smith. I'm going to take Michael Carter at that point because I like his short-term upside tremendously.
Yeah, no, I like his, exactly.
So running backs, definitely pay attention to the situation, but we'll move on from those guys and we'll talk about a few of the quarterbacks, not just 2 of them, a few of them. Now, much like we did with Waddle and Smith when we didn't include Jamar Chase, we're not going to include Trevor Lawrence on this one because he is a near unanimous pick as the best quarterback. Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson.
And no offense, Mac Jones, unless the Niners draft you at 3rd, then we'll have to revisit this video. But you are on most people's list the 5th best quarterback. So please, if you're a Mac Jones truther, do not attack us. We are just going by the averages.
Yeah, sorry. I just don't want to talk about Mac Jones in the slightest bit. But I will let you pick which of these 3 we'll talk about first. So go ahead and lead us off.
Let's talk about the one that I'm most skeptical on first.
Okay.
And that would be Justin Fields.
Beautiful. Yeah. I don't understand why so many people are souring on him all of a sudden.
I think it's because something got leaked, or not leaked. Like people were talking about how he makes like poor decisions and something. What was the other flaw?
Like real life bad initial read or something, or like
That or he takes too long to throw into the ball, and there's something about a bad initial read, a bad like first or second read, which it's not great things, but it's also the fact that he goes to a school that people say that like no good quarterback has come from, which like those curses somewhat pseudo exist in sports, but at the same time, like
there's always going to be a first for everything. Like when was the last LSU quarterback before Joe Burrow? When with the exception of Brady, when was there ever a Michigan quarterback?
It's
before like Cam, when was the last Auburn quarterback? Like, like I hate that argument so much because
and I agree because like before there's quite a few quarterbacks that come out of random schools, and there's quite a few that go to good schools and never amount to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's kind of a wish-wash argument. I just think that Justin Fields, I don't know how well he'll transition to the NFL. I think he can become a good starter. I'm not knocking him. I just personally, if I was drafting a quarterback via NFL GM or fantasy wise, I rather have obviously TL, but I'd rather probably have Zach Wilson or Trey Lance over Justin Fields. And that's just how I treat it. I like Zach Wilson he's like compared to a poor man's Josh Allen. And we know that I'm the biggest Josh Allen fan besides Buffalo Bills fans. So that's already a guaranteed for me. Secondly, Trey Lance looks like he can become like an elite quarterback in the NFL. Like he's, I hate saying this, but like the winning factor for Trey Lance is there, and it's there for Justin Fields too. But that's just one of the reasons why I have Trey Lance placed above Justin Fields. Although Trey Lance could be another Mitch Trubisky, Dwayne Haskins scenario because he only really has 1 year as a starter.
Yeah, but in that 1 year as a starter, he threw 0 interceptions, which is insane. Absolutely insane.
But this could be a draft class in which 3 or 4 of these 5 quarterbacks, not including TL or Jonesy, they end up becoming like good starters. So it's nothing. It's just preference. There's something, I don't know. It's a gut feeling. I don't think Fields will be bad, but I just don't think he'll be great. I think he'll be like good or okay.
See, and I'm on the other hand. I think Justin Fields he was my quarterback 2 of this class from a fantasy perspective for the longest time until I realized how much I'm in love with Trey Lance. But Justin Fields, he's still pretty up there for me. Obviously he's got the dual threat upside. I think most of the quarterbacks outside of Mac Jones in this class have that dual threat upside. T-Law, not as much as Fields, Lance, and Wilson.
Pocket passers matter too, Mikey.
Yeah, get out of here with that. But no, I think Justin Fields, he's very volatile. I think that there is a realm of possibility where he does bust. There is a realm of possibility where he falls a little too far.
But I'm not gonna knock you on that, and no one should, because there's a realm of possibility where all of these guys bust.
Oh, for sure. But Justin Fields, I don't know. He was the consensus QB2 for most people up until a few weeks ago, even. Obviously, Zach Wilson was creeping up. Trey Lance has started creeping up. But the disrespect for Justin Fields over the last handful of weeks has been absolutely absurd. So much to the point where, like, I think you're gonna, if you're in a 1 quarterback league, there is an outside chance that he could fall to your, the 3rd round in your rookie draft, depending on how many people need quarterbacks out there. Like our league, for example, I was trying to do a mock draft of our league, and only like two rosters in our entire league are in genuine need of a quarterback right now. Outside of that, this class is so loaded at receiver, at the receiver position, where you would be almost crazy to take your backup's backup quarterback as opposed to an upcoming receiver or something like that in the top 15, top 20 picks. So
well, you should know that I'll probably end up drafting one of those.
You'll probably draft all 5 of them because that's just what you do.
That's don't tell people on YouTube about it.
But I like Justin Fields. We'll transition to Trey Lance. I don't know. Trey Lance.
I'll let you carry this one away because I think you're his biggest fan at this point.
I am Trey Lance's biggest fan. Now, he is the most risky out of, even if you want to put Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones in this conversation for the sake of this argument.
No,
Trey Lance,
I would argue Mac Jones is maybe like a little bit safer than Lance.
I would too. I would say that Trey Lance has the biggest realm of possibilities. He could be the biggest bust in this class. He could be the biggest stud in this class. From a from a real life perspective, I'm taking Trevor Lawrence 10 out of 10 times, obviously. In fantasy, I do think Trey Lance is going to have the higher ceiling. And the reason why is because he's tremendous on the ground. He's not going to turn over the ball a shit ton. Not that I'm saying Trevor Lawrence is going to turn over the ball a shit ton.
Because I don't. What you've seen from Lance is sample.
But from what I've seen from Lance, I mean, if you look at the data, guys like Kyler Murray, guys like Josh Allen, historically guys like Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, guys that can run the ball really well are tremendous options for fantasy, because even if they have a bad day passing the ball, if they're getting you 60 or 70 rushing yards on the ground and average stats at best, you just got 6 or 7 bonus points just from his legs. Like it's such, I don't want to say it's underrated, because a lot of people realize that rushing quarterbacks, have tremendous upside in fantasy. But, Trey Lance, in my opinion, he does remind me a lot of Cam Newton coming out of college, a ton. But with Trey Lance, it's just, he could be Lamar Jackson if Lamar Jackson was a better passer. And
that's a great ceiling to hit.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Imagine having that on your fantasy roster. But at the same time, there, like you were saying, Trey Lance could be the next Dwayne Haskins or something like that. He obviously has more rushing upside than Dwayne Haskins, but
just because of sample size in college, I bring
exactly. We don't know, the sample size is so small. We really don't know what we're going to get. So if you're looking for safety in your rookie draft, maybe don't take Trey Lance unless he falls too far. But I do think he deserves to be based off of the tremendous amount of upside. And by the second round of your rookie draft, you're just drafting for upside anyway. Trey Lance does offer the most upside, in my opinion, out of all the quarterbacks.
I agree with the upside on Trey Lance. I'm with you right there. I think the safest guy is Trevor Lawrence. I think the next safest, who's the last guy we got to talk about still, is Zach Wilson. Not from a boomer bust potential, just from the fact that if the Jets, or when the Jets, I should say, draft this man, they just traded away their old number one, old first round quarterback only a couple seasons into his 23-year-old career. So studies show and science shows that if Wilson will get like a 2 to 4 year leash to prove himself on the Jets. So my point is, he has a pretty good leash, a pretty good timetable to develop, and he's going to start right away. There's no competition on the roster.
Yeah.
Whereas a guy like Lance, maybe, or a guy like Jones, who I'm talking about, might not start right away. Whereas TL, Wilson are going to start right away, and then whoever the Niners take, which
I mean, even who the Niners take, unless they deal Jimmy G before the season starts, they could technically sit behind Jimmy G.
That's my point. So the first two are the only real ones that are going to start right away, and that's why I like Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Talk about rushing upside. Zach Wilson, the white boy can run. He's not that slow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he's not like lightning speed, but he's definitely mobile, and that's the way the NFL is going with quarterbacks. Mikey just named off a bunch of good ones. Who've drafted recently and not so recently, and you want to throw it back, guys like Michael Vick and Randall Cunningham helped change the game. So I just think and even the Eagles quarterback, my new quarterback, Jalen Hurts, I would consider him a mobile quarterback.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's the way it's going. I do think Zach Wilson does have pretty big bust potential. I'll be honest.
I mean, especially going to the Jets. Just looking
you beat me.
I know that we were like totally tearing down the Ohio State narrative when we were talking about Justin Fields.
There's a Jet narrative.
But there is a Jet narrative, and you gotta look. I mean, thank God Sam Darnold got out early enough in his career to where he still could do something. But the last Mark Sanchez, what was his name? Pennington or Chad
Pennington, right?
Yeah. They ruin everything they touch. I mean, obviously, new coaching regime, new pretty much everything.
They actually have decent enough weapons for throwing wise for Mr. Wilson. It's got to add tight end, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens, but I agree. I think Zach Wilson, outside of Trevor Lawrence, is going to be the only quarterback guaranteed to start on day one.
Which you might need, like Mikey said, there are people in our league who need quarterbacks, and that's why Wilson will probably go earlier.
Exactly. And I do think that's going to factor into it. I do think that on rookie draft day, Zach Wilson will be the second quarterback off the board for most people.
He'll go in the second round in most
there.
leagues. In one quarterback league.
Yeah, I think so. I'd be surprised to see him fall out of the top 15, top 16 picks.
And if he does, trade up and get him. That's good value.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, there's so many options in this class where even if I needed a quarterback, and I did need a quarterback, I personally wouldn't take one in the top 20 unless like Trevor Lawrence fell to like 13 or 14, something ridiculous.
Mikey knows, he made fun of me. I draft quarterbacks every year.
Obsessively.
No, it's just one or two. It's not that bad. But no, I have like 3 third-round picks, and I fully intend on landing one of the guys in the 3rd round because I expect I'll even draft Mac Jones if he's still there at like 312 just for a joke. So we'll see.
So one of the things, so obviously I can say that you're probably going to take Zach Wilson in this group.
Out of all of them, I'm going boom or bust, and I'll pay my old Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz to the school some homage. I'm going with Trey Lance.
Well, I'm actually surprised to hear you say that because I'm also going to go Trey Lance. Justin Fields he's currently my QB3 in my rankings, but I could potentially move him down under Zach Wilson.
He's my
before
4.
the draft. And
I'm not knocking him. I don't know.
Well, here's my thing, right? If you want to go boom or bust, you're going with Trey Lance because he's got a tremendous ceiling. If you want to go for safety, you're going Zach Wilson because he's going to have every opportunity in the world to start immediately. Justin Fields is kind of somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
he's in between. There's not a ton of safety. He's not as volatile as Trey Lance. Doesn't have doesn't have as high of a ceiling as Trey Lance, in my opinion. Everyone's opinion is different, but I don't think he does. But I do think that his ceiling is probably higher than Zach Wilson's, at least for the early stages of the career. So it's just one of those things where I like all 3 of these quarterbacks. I think they all have a lot of talent. I think they have a lot of upside, especially on the ground game, which is awesome from a fantasy perspective. But Justin Fields is kind of in the middle of the spectrum. And with these 2, you need to just do a full send on either side. And that's why I would pick Fields after both of these guys.
I agree, because if you're a team that already has quarterbacks, and like Mikey said, you're drafting for a backup, or backup, I'm taking the upside either way. I'm not going middle. I'm going left or right.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be interesting to see where they land. Like I gotta say, if Justin Fields goes to San Francisco,
yeah, I kind of like that.
Then things are going to change, because in that offense, I would actually really like it, and I probably would move him up past Trey Lance unless Trey Lance landed in an equally as good situation, which doubtful. One of these 2 guys I think is going to land in Atlanta, because Atlanta would be really dumb not to take a quarterback at 4 overall in a loaded class when their quarterback's 36, but it's Atlanta. So I guess you never know, but whoever lands in Atlanta is going to sit behind Matt Ryan for the first year.
Actually, you know what? I'll say this take right here. I think there's a quarterback in this draft class that's worth being considered the 5th one off the board. That's not Mac Jones. That's how much I hate the Mac Jones hype. And that's a certain man that went to Texas A&M. If you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, Kellen Mond.
Yeah, I think if he goes to the right situation, I genuinely think he could become a star in the NFL. I'm not saying he'd be good, but I think he could be in the NFL. The Mac Jones hype is getting out of control. I just can't. I gotta say that on the video, dude. People gotta stop.
Yeah, well, we can leave that conversation for a different day, but
of course.
Yeah, so we'll wrap this one up here. So going back to it in review, we both like Devonta Smith over Jaylen Waddle, not by a ton, but it's definitely worth mentioning. We were split on Michael Carter and Kenneth Gainwell for various different reasons. And surprisingly, we agreed that we would both take Trey Lance over Zach Wilson, Justin. I really was not expecting that from you. I was expecting a total Zach Wilson takeover from you.
I put my brain in there. If I was drafting this year, I'm not going to take a quarterback early. I'm going to wait till the end of the second round, third round. So I would get a guy like Trey Lance. I'm getting upside and I'm waiting to get my backup. And I'm getting my sick kicks in, my one of 4 quarterbacks to draft every year.
Has there been a draft where you haven't taken at least one quarterback yet in our league?
No. And I've drafted a guy who started more than 3 games every single year in the draft. So I have a good record for quarterbacks. They might not be good, but they're going to start.
Yeah. I took the only quarterback I've taken in our league was a few years ago with like the Mr. Irrelevant pick. I took Trace McSorley just for the memes, pretty much.
I took Jared Stidham, so that's a joke in itself.
Yeah, seriously. But all right, cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of Loaded Box Vids. Hopefully you enjoyed it and found at least 1 or 2 useful things in here. I know Dylan and I just like to talk for the sake of talking, but hey, I mean, we absolutely love bringing these videos to everyone, and we hope you guys have been enjoying it and taking a lot from it. Feel free to head over to our website, check out our rankings, our articles, the podcast. We actually have a handful of us from Loaded Box and Dan from Beer Fueled. We actually all got together, did a 2-round Superflex mock, and that's being released a little later on this week. Actually, by the time this video releases, that might be out. So check out that if you're looking for a Superflex mock. I know Dylan and I don't talk too much about Superflex, so you can get your fill over there. Make sure you're following Dylan on Twitter. Come and follow me on Twitter, and of course follow Loaded Box on Twitter as well. It's where you can always find our latest news and updates if you're not consistently checking on the website. But for myself, for Dylan, and of course for Loaded Box, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.